welcome to Zibby's Bookshop. We're going to start our event, which is a conversation between Lori Elizabeth Flynn and Alana Jane Fraser. So Lori Elizabeth Flynn is a former model who lives in London, Ontario.
That doesn't surprise me, but I didn't know that.
She's the author of 3 young adult novels, Last Girl Lied To and All Eyes on Her, all under the name L.E. Flynn. Her adult fiction debut, The Girls Are Also Nice Here, was named USA Today Best Book of 2021 and sold in 11 territories worldwide. Alana Jane Fraser is an author and screenwriter from close to Los Angeles.
Yes.
Her career has spanned many eras, including True Crime Junkie, Rich People Problems, and Horse Girl. Yes. She is currently in her lusty assassin era.
That's true.
So I'm going to kick it off to you guys. We'll do about 30 minutes of a conversation, 15 minutes Q&A, and then 15 minutes silence.
Go.
So, go for it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yay. All right, Lori, let's get started.
All right.
So I like to start like kind of at the beginning. So I would love to hear, when was the sort of first moment that you that you can remember, that you thought, hey, I want to be a writer?
I was in the 4th grade, and we used to have this assignment where we'd have a piece of paper and you'd have to fill it with like a story or whatever. And everyone would complain, but I'd go up and have like 10 pieces of paper because my stories would just keep going. Looking back, I think it's foreshadowing of the fact that I'm a overwriter. My drafts are always huge. But anyway, and then that year I wrote, my parents had one of those school memory books for me, and I wrote that I wanted to be a writer in it. And my mom wrote this sweet little note underneath that was like, you can do anything. It was so cute. So ever since then, but of course, you know, I took roundabout way to get there.
Yeah, I love that.
I feel like once you enter adulthood, it's like you start to realize, oh, it's not practical.
Yeah,
I shouldn't do that. I'll pursue something else. But I always just knew in the back of my head it's what I should be doing.
Yes.
And eventually I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it, and whatever happens, happens. And of course I didn't tell anyone I was working on anything because
I love that.
I didn't want to like people to be like, oh, you're writing a book? Who's publishing you? And I'd be like, well, nobody. so like, and of course, then they're trying to get an agent and everything like that. But
we're going to go through that. Don't jump ahead.
At that point, it was just little me knew I wanted to be an author.
Little you, yeah. So were you always like a reader then?
Oh yeah.
And what were like some books that like really made you feel like that you wanted to tell stories?
Well, I remember like just when I would read anything when I was a kid, but there was like the Babysitter's Club and Sweet Valley High books. So I was like, those ones I just loved.
What do you think you loved about them?
I think I just loved like the dynamics between the characters and like the, you know, friendships and relationships. And I just found them really interesting. Yeah. And I remember I wanted to be the Wakefield twins from the Sweet Valley books because they were so glamorous and like beautiful.
You're there, girl.
I was like, oh my gosh, I want to drive a Jeep like them. I drive a Rust Bucket minivan, in case anyone wants to know. But anyway, I think. But the first book that really made me feel like I wanted to write this kind of book was Gone Girl. I binged it on an airplane from South Africa, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, that was that feeling.
Totally. Okay, so you kind of alluded to this, but you always sort of wanted to be an author. And then at what point did you think that it was actually possible? Like, what was that like kind of like moment in your life? Because I think like, did you sort of see other people? Like, what made you think like, I can actually do this, you know?
I think it was always just sort of a far off dream that was never going to happen up until I started querying. And then it was like, I got a lot of rejections.
Yeah. So did you write like multiple books that just kind of never saw the light of day?
2 books that never saw the light of day.
How did you know how to even query?
I did a lot of research online.
Yeah.
So, but I remember I was like, I got a lot of rejections for those early books, but there was a couple like nice little things, or there was one revise and resubmit that ended up not being an offer. But those like gave me enough encouragement to think, okay, maybe I can actually do this. So that was sort of the feeling of like, maybe I'm not a hack. I don't know.
So when you, at that time, because we kind of debuted at the same time in young adult. So this was like around 2015 probably is when you sold the book.
Yeah.
So at that time, like, were you like on Twitter at that time? With, like,
I was, because you know how I got my first book in like my first young adult book, which is called Firsts, but was through that Pitch Wars.
That's what I was going to
Yes,
actually
so
ask, because
Pitch
I think
Wars.
I knew that, because I was going to say to you,
Yeah.
did you do contests? Because that back then,
It was a
like
big
it was
thing.
a very big thing
Yeah.
that people did contests. I mean,
Writing
I did them as
contests.
well.
Yeah.
And that was like a really kind of like a way that a lot of people got into the industry at that time.
Yes.
Where I don't know if that's really the case now.
I
but
don't
it's
think it
interesting.
is.
Yeah.
Back then it was big into, so you did them too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I think I got through. No, yeah, I did get through. Like I had, I think J. Robin Brown was my mentor
Okay.
for one of the, I think it was Pitch Wars, but I
Yeah.
wasn't I was like an alternate.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but it was such a big deal.
It was a big
such
deal.
a big deal to have somebody, a real author, like read your work.
Yes,
To be selected. It was
a big deal back, and Lori Goldstein was mine,
Oh, yeah.
and we still talk to this day. She's
That's really
wonderful.
cool. Yeah.
So yeah, she was big. She was really supportive and kind of helped me realize.
So that was first.
Yeah.
Is that how you got your agent?
Yes. So I didn't get my agent through the contest.
Okay.
It was like one of those, I got a bunch of requests, but I
Yeah.
didn't get, I queried and got my agent after.
Yeah.
And then.
Okay. So then how, okay. I don't know if I should ask if it's the same agent, but like, so how did you pick, like when you got the initial offer, did you immediately go offer representation from the agent? Were you immediately like, oh yeah, I'm going to go with this person? Or did you have other offers? Like, how did you kind of like parse that one
For
out?
my YA, I had a few other offers. So I kind of like, talked to a few different people, but then I did part ways with the first agent. And
Okay.
when I wrote The Girls Are Also Nice Here, which is my adult debut, because
right.
I wanted to work with someone who could represent adult novels as
because
well.
a lot of like agents represent sort of like different genres and like different age categories. So yeah, that totally makes sense that you had your young adult. And then, so what was like the first, okay, so your first book, I remember first,
Yes.
which was like, we're not going to go through all of them, but I just remember this book very specifically because it was kind of like, almost like that Emma Stone movie. Like it was like,
Easy
right?
A, yes.
Yeah.
Which I love that movie. It's great.
Yeah. No, and it was like it had this like amazing cover. It was like this really fun story. So what was that like whole experience of your first publication? Like, what was that like?
Honestly, I was just like happy to have a book out, and I think at that point I was still like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be published. It was I was very like, looking back, I didn't know very much about the industry, and I was just kind of like, everything's excellent, and it was great. It was a great first book experience.
Yeah, I think it did really well.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It was fun, and I loved it. It was very positive.
Yeah. Okay, so then you had that, and then you had two other young adults. So what was like the sort of decision process behind you switching to adult novels?
I think it wasn't like a conscious thing in my mind where I was like, I want to switch, but I got the idea for The Girls Are Also Nice Here, and I realized it was not a YA idea.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have one timeline in college. Originally, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a YA, but then I realized I needed the adult perspective in the book. So that's how I made the decision.
Yeah. So did you write that entire book and then you found a different agent?
I did. So I wrote the book, and then I parted ways with my first agent, and then which amicably, she's a lovely person. It's just that I wanted someone who would represent adult as well. So, and then I queried agents for my adult book, and I got 10 offers, which is crazy.
Because it was such a good book.
I was blown away though.
It was so good. It deserved
my
every offer.
Thank you.
I love that book.
I just had my second child at the time, and he was only like 3 weeks old, and I started sending queries because I was thinking, this is going to take a while, right? Because whatever.
No.
And I started to get interest right away. I was not, like, my young adult stuff had taken time, so I wasn't expecting that. So I was
but I feel like you set it up right, because it's like that Sod's Law thing where you're like, this would be the worst time for me to get interest.
Yeah, so I'm like on the phone with agents, and I'm trying to like feed this kid and this little baby. It was such a funny time thinking back.
And how did you decide to go with, so we got the agent, and then how did we decide to go with Simon & Schuster?
So that was another whirlwind process.
I guess I should ask, did you go through edits with your agent?
Yes, my agent is super editorial. She's incredible at her job. She's like always has amazing ideas. So we went through, I feel like, a few rounds. Just to get it ready for submission. And then we went on submission. And
how old was your baby when you went on submission?
Oh my gosh, 5 months old?
Okay.
Cool. So I feel like we worked on the book for and then it was like trying to find the right timing to go on submission.
Yeah.
So we worked on the book for a few months together, back and forth, and then we went out on submission, and we went out on submission in Canada first, since I'm Canadian.
Wow.
And so my agent went out and we had an overnight preempt from Simon & Schuster Canada.
What?
And
Overnight?
Nita Prose, who everyone probably knows, the author of The Maid. She was my Canadian editor. I love her. Yes, she's
represented
a genius. Yeah, she's, oh my gosh. So I'm so happy I got to work with her.
Yeah,
so
cool.
She's the one who preempted it, and we went.
Wait,
with
is she still your editor?
She's just writing now.
Okay,
but
that makes sense.
I know, but I feel like grateful I got to work with for 2 books on her. I learned so much from her. She's incredible.
Okay, so she was for this book.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I was heartbroken when she left because I just love her so much. But we took that offer, the preempt, and then we went out in the U.S. and we had an auction. And there were 7 houses in the auction. It was wild. Yay. And Simon & Schuster, I was just immediately after my conversation with Karina, my editor, was like, I totally, we click, and it was pretty easy choice. So
sorry, but you had 2 editors?
I had 3 actually. I have a UK one as well.
And they all give you notes?
What they do is they work together to come up with like an edit letter together. Yeah. And so it's not just like 3 edit letters.
Yeah, that'd be a lot. Yeah.
No.
But they all disagree, and you're like, oh.
They work really closely. So because there's Karina and Nita, we're Simon & Schuster Canada and US, and then I have a UK editor who also works really closely with them. Cool. So it was nice to get
yes, everyone's like.
But they worked. It wasn't in an overwhelming way where it was like, oh, and they always seem to be on the same page.
That's awesome.
So that was really good.
Important.
Yeah. It was always a smooth process for me.
All right, cool.
Grateful for.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about Till Death Do Us Part, the latest novel from Lori Elizabeth Flynn. So, where did the idea come from for this novel?
Well, to be honest, it was a long process to come up with this book. I like to talk about this because I feel like a lot of authors don't, or people sort of have the perception that once you get published that everything you write is going to be published after that. Yeah. At least I did when I was a new author. I was like, oh,
I'm in.
Oh, I'm in. Yes, exactly. So I actually wrote a whole book between the girls and this book that just didn't end up being the right book.
I want to read that book.
It's about a bachelorette party gone wrong. It was actually really fun, but we just weren't feeling it for my next book. And we just kind of worked on it together, me and my agent, me and my editors, and it wasn't really working for my next book. And it's heartbreaking to put something aside as an author, like, that you've worked on.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I made the decision to start from scratch. And I kind of had this idea forming in my head, because I don't know about you, but I always have like 10 ideas behind the scenes that I'm like mentally cheating on my book with, because I'm like, oh, I want to work on you. So this was one of those ideas that were in the back of my head. And we kind of went to my editors with a few pitches, and they were interested in the pitch for this one. So I kind of went from there, and you'd think it like all was well, but no, I wrote like a few failed drafts of this before it went anywhere. And I think the problem was the setting was wrong. I had set the book in a New York suburb. Yeah. So it was not working. We were trying, and then I think the marriage and like the dynamic about the husband who died on the honeymoon, or did he? That was always kind of there, but the setting was different. One of the narrators, Bev, didn't even have a section in the first version, which is hard to. So once we added her, and once we got the setting nailed down, everything clicked with this book.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Was it originally conceived as being like a dual timeline? It sounds like not.
It was, but it wasn't Bev's voice, and I feel like
else?
Yeah. So it was. It just wasn't working the way it was, and there was also they had different jobs. They lived in different
This is
suburbs.
Like so crazy how much you changed.
Oh my gosh! Like I want to weep when I think about the hundreds, like literally over 100,000 words on the cutting room floor, never to be seen. Yeah. But I feel like sometimes you have to write yourself into the story the wrong way to be able to figure out the right way to approach it. And
you can't.
I wish I was a neat first drafter who like got things right the first time, but I'm not. I have to be a hot mess first. Like my first drafts are sometimes miss the mark by a lot, but I feel like it's not wasted time because and at least like I had been spending time with the characters. They were in my head. So when it came time to write the draft set on the vineyard with Bev's voice, it like everything clicked like the way that
I think it's like your process is your process and you are who you are. You
I own it, my hot mess. Yeah.
You can't like force yourself to like, you can see somebody else who seems like it's so easy.
I wish.
Which it probably isn't.
No, that's true. Nothing's ever easy.
Yeah, everyone has like their kind of thing that is a struggle, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that is actually interesting. Like with the setting, okay, because I'm kind of like curious, like how did you just go, oh, the setting's wrong, let me go somewhere else? Or was it like, how did that even come into play?
Well, my agent and I, in one of our many, many, many phone calls, she's a saint. She's like literally spent hours on the phone with me over this book. But we were sort of trying to brainstorm like what would be an interesting setting, because that's one of the things about the book that just wasn't working. So we were brainstorming like where could we set it that would be interesting, and we started tossing around different things and like different things that could be tied to like their jobs, and then the idea of a vineyard came up, and I was like, yes, and I love wine, so I was like,
there we go, that was
perfect.
The next question.
Yes, so I was like, I think it's important as an author, like obviously you don't have to be your characters, but I think having an interest in the stuff you're going to spend all this time researching is so important. Otherwise it's going to be boring. You're just going to be like, oh, I've got to do that research again. This was fun because I was like, oh, I get to learn about wine. I get to research Napa. And I had another baby at that time. I was like my fourth. So I was at home, so I was armchair traveling to Napa. I wasn't actually going anywhere. And it was the tail end of COVID. Nobody was traveling. So I didn't.
Have you ever been to Napa?
No. So I had, and I knew I had to.
Now you have.
And it's amazing. And I want to go back. But now I'm like, setting it in a real place, you really have to nail it.
So how did you do that?
I just did a lot of tedious, painstaking research. The same as with The Girls Are Also Nice Here when I said it at Wesleyan. I was like, I'm going to do a lot of research into this book and the setting, because my agent and I were like, if we're going to set it here, we have to really nail it. So I did the same thing here. I did a lot of research. It's funny. I wrote the first draft of the vineyard setting. So who knows what actual draft that was, but I call it the first draft with this setting. I wrote it in 3 weeks. It was fast. However, between that and the second draft, I added like 20,000 words of just literally wine.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot. You can tell, obviously, you sort of like did the research there.
A ton, but I'm the type who I can't do my research before I start writing. I have to do it after I already have spat out a messy draft, because I need the momentum of the story. So that otherwise I'm too distractible of a person. I'll fall into a rabbit hole online and I'll never leave. And then I'll look up 6 hours later and I'm like, oh, I didn't write anything today, but now I'm on this random person's Instagram. Like, I don't so,
oh my God, so true.
So I was like, I need to, but having that first draft, I just left a lot of blanks for myself. I know some people probably shudder thinking about this, because some people draft a lot cleaner than me, but I leave a lot of blanks. It's like fill in later, add details here. There's a lot of talking heads in my drafts, and the setting's not fleshed out.
Write something cool here.
Yes, I will literally, or make this better.
Write something good here. Yeah,
witty banter, romance. This is anyway. So, good luck, babe. But I left a lot of notes. It would be funny to go back and look at that draft actually. But I did a lot of research though between the first and second drafts, and
you kind of wove it into the story as well. So the fact that you sort of had written the story before, that makes sense. Yeah. Because then you're able to, as well, to pull from the research what actually is going to enhance the story, rather than the research driving the story.
Yeah, I had Bev and Amelia in the first draft, sitting and tasting wine, but I didn't describe the wine. I was just this is what they're doing, and then I'll fill it in later. Yeah. And with
what kind of wine do you like? What's your favorite wine?
No, I love
any of those two. Or
I like most wines.
Red or white.
I'm mostly a white
Orange,
drinker.
I guess, is now the thing.
I love Prosecco and a dry whites usually, but I'm not picky. I like trying new wines too. So
how do you come up with your characters? Where does that come from for you? Is it real people? Is it characters in other sort of stories? Is it how does it come about?
They just pop.
Yourself.
No, they pop into my head. But the thing I know a lot of authors do the questionnaires to get to know their characters ahead of time. I
Oh
don't.
my God.
I
No,
don't. No, I don't
maybe.
do that either. So I
Maybe
like.
I should. It'd be
I
fun.
write
Certain
myself
characters would be
into
fun.
them. I don't know if you're the same way.
What does it
write,
mean, write myself?
like
Write-
I write, like I get to know them as I write them.
Okay, yeah.
And then since I spend so many drafts with them, by the end, like I know everything about them in my own head, which like I know how they would react in a situation. I know what they
Just,
wouldn't
like,
do.
feel it.
Yes, it's like
Cool.
this instinctual thing where that's sort of how I don't know. They kind of come to me, and I'm the type who always has so many ideas on the back burner that I have. My phone is like loaded with notes. Like the notes app is like full.
Yeah.
If anyone were to find my phone and pick it up, they'd think I was like a psychopath. I have so many like crazy things in there. I'm like murder. No, but I always have a lot on the back burner. So I kind of get to know my characters before I even start drafting in a way, because I'll make all sorts of
characters
notes.
from other ideas?
Not usually. Like usually I'll have like characters assigned already to like an idea that I have.
Yeah.
But you know, if something's not working, I would be like, well, this person's still interesting. Maybe I can squeeze them in here somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's sort of
Do your books like influence you like mentally?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I knew that was going to be a weird question. I don't know. Do you ever feel like you like kind of like get so into the zone of like what you're writing that you kind of like feel like you're like, I don't know, does it affect the way you see the world? Sounds like a no is the answer here.
I can't hear this question.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that. Yeah, no, now you're gonna put me on the spot. She already said it was a
No,
weird question.
No, it's a really
No, I was just wondering if
question.
her books like influenced her, because it's like, you know, when you write like thrillers, you write books that are like kind of dark, or I don't know, does it like, do you feel like it sort of affects your life like the way it would an actor perhaps?
I don't know. I think I'm like able to turn it on and off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because like it's funny. Sometimes I'm like, I could be writing like a really dark scene, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, time to pick up my kids from school.
Yeah, totally.
So, but I'm able to like kind of turn that on and off
Yeah.
without it getting too much in my head. And I write some pretty dark
Yeah.
stuff. Sometimes I'm like, this is
That's what I'm
kind of
thinking.
like weird that I'm sitting here typing this in my notes app while my kids are sitting here like, oh my gosh. But I think I'm just sort of able to to turn it on and
like a
off.
fan.
But my brain is always like going to twisty, dark places. I'm always
Yeah.
like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, maybe I could write like a rom-com or something. And then I'm like, but there's murder. I don't know. I'm like, that's just where my brain goes.
So this actually kind of like leads to my next question, which is, so in this novel, like without giving anything away, there are a lot of crazy twists. Like especially at the end, it's like, holy moly, you won't see it coming. Like it's just gonna like blow your mind. So when did those come in? Like, were you like aware of that you were gonna have certain twists from the beginning? Did it kind of like catch you by surprise? Were you kind of like consciously thinking, oh, I want to have like a lot of twists, or did it just kind of organically
Love that
happen?
question. I think for me, they kind of organically happened. I kind of had an idea of a couple of them going in.
Yeah.
And it was different from The Girls Are Also Nice Here. I went into that one not knowing anything that happened. And so I like flew by the seat of my pants. I was surprised myself as I was writing. So I went into this book trying to do the same thing. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I just was trying to pull off too much. It just wasn't happening. So I had to like re-outline or try to outline for the first time, which was disastrous. But but I kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, I know I want these twists in. But that said, we got rid of a few twists because it was just feeling, and then but a couple other things got added in that I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming, but I've just added it. So I guess we'll see. For me, I think I generally like, I might have a cool thing I want to achieve, and I might try to structure the book a little bit around that. But the bottom line for me with twists is that they have to feel authentic to the characters and like they're organic, and like in a reread, somebody would be like, oh, like I love this feeling when I'm surprised, and then I immediately want to read again because I'm like, oh, because then I'll pick up the little breadcrumbs that were there the whole time, and sort of, oh, I didn't put it together, but oh, I should have, because the clues are all laid out. I find it really infuriating, not in a good way, when something comes out of left field and you're like, really? That there was no breadcrumbs and it's all just for shock value. I don't want mine to feel like that.
Maybe you go back and read and you're like, where is the clue?
No, I know. So I always want it to feel like it's authentic for that character and their journey, and like if I can sort of answer that, and like it's not just for shock, this is the essence of the book. That's sort of the way I approach a twist, because I love being surprised and stuff when I'm
Yeah, of
reading,
course,
but
yeah.
only in a way that I'm like, oh, that was so clever, or
Yeah.
I get it.
Like I should have seen that coming.
Yes.
I could have.
Yes,
but I frickin'
exactly.
didn't. Okay, so we've kind of alluded to this a little bit. I do think like every book is different. Like I heard like Taylor Swift like talking about how every song like is like written in a different way. And I think that's so true about books.
Yes.
But do you feel that you have like a process that works for you when you're approaching a book?
I think in general, and I think it's so true that books demand something different of you every time.
Yeah.
But I think for me in general, I just try to hammer out that first draft quickly to keep the momentum
How
going.
long is a first draft for you?
Oh boy,
Because it's well, you said you write long, but some people would say like you'd write under and then you.
The first draft, which is actually like who knows, like the 5th or 6th draft of this book, the first Vineyard draft was only like 75,000 words. It's the shortest draft I've ever written in my life. My 3rd book that I'm working on, the first draft was 150, so that's fun to tackle.
That's
yeah. So yeah. Anyway, no, it's not. It's there's so much to cut after. So
I'm the opposite of you. Okay. I'm like, oh, we're done. It's 30,000.
Okay. Oh my God, I'd be like just getting started. Like, why am I so long-winded? It's anyway. But I think regardless of the length of the draft, I try to hammer it out quickly. I use the Pomodoro method. I set a timer because I set a timer for like 15 or 20 minutes because I'm so easily distracted. Yeah. I have to. So I try to just write. And I try to write 2,000 words a day when I'm drafting.
And then you're done when you hit that. You're like, I feel good. I'm done.
No, if I'm feeling good, I'll keep going. But like that's like my goal when I'm drafting, just to keep the momentum going. And I don't go back and edit. I just literally plow on until the end. And I'll have a separate Word document open of like stuff I know needs to be fixed because I'm like, but I don't want to go back and waste my time. I'm like, I'll fix it later. But I just want to keep the momentum going. But I have to. I know that so I'm going to leave this note, and future me will thank past me for leaving a note, so that I don't read it and I'm like, what the heck? It makes no sense.
So your writing is like really beautiful and like prosy. So when you're doing a draft, do you write that way?
Some of the writing makes it into the final cut.
Or do you write like more simple? Do you reckon?
I think I write similarly because I send excerpts to May and Jesse sometimes, and they're like, oh my God, I love your. So I think the writing is similar, but like, of course, it's not the same, like not the same level. Like I'll pretty it up, but I feel like some of the stuff makes it into the final book. I'm always happy to see. I'm like, oh yeah, that line survived. But so I feel like I'm not like my writing itself isn't poor quality necessarily in those early drafts. It's just that there's plot holes galore. Characters who disappear for 100 pages with no explanation. Characters' names change, and I'm like, how? Like I couldn't even keep the name straight. I don't know. But like all sorts of issues come up. But like, I feel like the writing isn't usually as bad as I think. Sometimes, you ever have those bad writing days, and you're like, oh, I'm terrible. Ever? Like if anyone ever saw this, they'd be like, someone pays you to write books.
I have the days when I can't even like write a sentence. Like I just like, how does that even like what is
also just like the inner editor. Do you have like your inner voice being like,
yeah, for sure,
you're not talented? Like mine is always telling me that.
Like there's like times too when it's like you're operating from a place of fear, so you're just being like,
yes,
this isn't going to sell. Like this isn't what's cool right now. Like no one's going to buy this. Like what do you? And then you like talk yourself out of stuff for sure.
It's so true. And I try I try to shut all that off. I'm such a perfectionist. But if I didn't, I would never write anything. Because I would just be second guessing literally everything I put on the page, which is not a good feeling.
Okay, so you've written young adults and you've written adult and thrillers. And your young adult, it was a contemporary for all of them, would you say? Or was that my later thrillers?
The second two were thrillers.
Okay, so do you have like other genres or age categories or even like storytelling formats, like with like film, theater, musical that you would like to try?
I would be interested in like learning more about screenplays someday. But I also like I'm always like I have so many different book ideas in the back of my head. But like I'd love to write like a big meaty like family saga type story someday because I just love that
literary.
Maybe I will see.
Or so like popular commercial fiction.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, but I have all these ideas, so I'm like. Never say never. I might
Yeah.
you know?
That was like
Try
kind of
to
like one of my
pull
questions is
something
like
off.
if you could write anything and you didn't have to worry about what anyone else was like, what would
Yeah. Well, I love those like big like family saga type stories that are
Yeah.
like multi-generational.
Oh,
I
yeah.
find that stuff so interesting to explore. So I'd love to write a book like that someday.
it be? And that would really lend itself well to you writing a lot of words.
Yes, there. I know. I feel like maybe my
You're already
subconscious is
there.
telling
Yeah.
me something, and I have a few ideas. So just who knows what the future holds. But I would definitely I don't feel like I'm hemmed into like one type
Yeah.
of writing. I don't think I'll ever write younger than YA though, because I just don't. I think
murder.
my brain is too dark. And my kids are like, you could write a kid's book, and I'm like, oh, I would love to, but I just don't think I have the brain for it. But like, huge respect for people who do. I like authors of kids' books are amazing.
Yeah.
So
All right, awesome. Well, I think that's been our 30 minutes. So now we're going to open the forum up for questions from the audience.
All right. Okay.
Andy?
So, two different. First question is about when you're talking about your twist.
Mhm.
Think of a twist and go back to add breadcrumbs that weren't there.
Yes.
That's a good question.
That's an excellent question. Definitely. Like if I have something in mind, I'll sort of write the breadcrumbs in to start with. But if something kind of comes up later, I'll have to go back and look for places to breadcrumb it in so that it doesn't feel like it's just been added randomly, which is the last thing I want a reader to think. Like it's kind of like, when you watch a show or something and it's like trying to guess who the killer is, like in a horror movie. I always hate when it's somebody who you saw for like 2 seconds and it's like, we didn't even have a chance at guessing that. So I'm always thinking of that type of thing in the back of my head where I'm like, I want the reader to be like pleasantly satisfied that I've hopefully surprised them. So that definitely requires going back and adding in things.
And the second question is about Napa. You already planned your visit to Napa, or you have a tour stop in San Francisco?
I was in Napa on Tuesday for my launch. It was amazing.
Awesome.
So I'm just sad I didn't get more time there because now I need to plan like a big winery tour.
Yeah.
As
As a celebrity of Napa.
The people there were
I
so
put you guys
nice.
on the map.
No, I want to go back.
So in your research, did you find a winery that you liked? Or
you know what's funny? So I was revising this book and I was in the liquor store because I guess that's what you do when you're revising a book.
Well, you were revising in the liquor store?
No, I should have been. It might have been less painful.
Just shorten the trip.
Gosh. No, I was revising the book and I was at the liquor store as one does. But I was like, I bought I noticed there's a type of wine called Josh Sellers, and I never heard of it. But Josh is like the main character in my book, who the husband who may or may not be deceased. There's a winery called Josh, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I took a picture of it and sent it to my team anyway. But I discovered that, and I started drinking the wine, and I've gone through quite a few bottles of it by now. But I
love that.
I kept the little screw top. It says Josh on it. I kept it on my desk when I was drafting.
What a great name for a wine! Like it's just so like
Josh Sellers. But like you can imagine, I'm in the store like in my head thinking about my book, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, that's weird.
Yeah,
and it's from California too. So
perfect. Oh my God, it's meant to be.
It was weird.
Now that's the twist. That's the final twist.
I know that's the twist.
He wasn't gone. He was wine all along.
He was wine. There, never thought of that. Yes, Lauren.
So this is a question for both of you. What have you learned from your first book that you published to your last?
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Boy.
Or if you
That
have
is
any
an
advice.
excellent question. I think my advice would be like, you can only control so much about the writing and publication process. And
you can't control anything.
yeah,
Unless you're right.
you have to sort of let go of control and keep in mind that the only thing you can control is the words you are writing, and to always be like working on something else. Because I don't know about you, but I find if I'm just obsessing over the book that is coming out, I'm not like, everything feels so personal if it doesn't go your way. But if you have something else that you're excited about, and it's just a reminder, it's like that the creativity and the writing is like why we're here, and not like everything else that comes with it. It can be so easy to just be like looking for external validation. I feel like once you've been published, it's like you're in this cycle and you're like, but I feel like it's always for me. I'm like just trying to keep in mind why I do this because I love writing and
being
also
creative, just like
exactly. And I feel like that can be hard when you're before you're published. I feel like it's a lot more liberating. Like you can just be free.
Yeah,
But then
it's
once
not a
you're
job.
published, you're like thinking, oh, is my agent going to like it? Is my editor going to like it? Are the readers going to like it? Or is
Yeah.
everyone going to hate it? It's hard to get rid of those voices, but I feel like you just always have to write what you're excited about and not like what you think somebody else is going to be excited about.
Yeah.
At least, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I feel.
No, I agree with you. My advice would be don't compare yourself to other people.
Yes.
And that like goes for like in every kind of like level of like, don't compare your process to somebody else. Like if somebody is so much more efficient, you're not them. And it's like trying to force yourself to be someone.
So true.
Or people are putting out 1 million books. Like you can get into like, my first book came out, I have like a family member who's super successful. And I think I felt like a failure, even though I had a book coming out because I was like, well, this person had like 10 and I need to get another one immediately.
Yeah. It's so true.
You know what I mean? And it's like now I'm not like that. Like now I'm like, I'm not even gonna write a book this year. Like fuck it.
Because the bar keeps getting
chilling. Like I got it.
The bar keeps getting higher. Like I remember being like, oh, if I get an
That's for
agent, I'll be happy.
sure.
Oh, if I get an editor, I'll be happy. And then the bar just keeps getting higher because you do compare yourself to other people. And then it's like, oh, well, this person has another book coming out and I'm still in the hot mess of my next one.
And
so
my book
it's,
didn't do as well.
So it is that's such good advice not to compare. Keep your eyes on your own paper, right?
Yeah.
As much as you can.
Totally.
Why did you start with YA?
That's
Is that where your heart really was?
Oh, that's curious.
I think it
Because
was.
I have a daughter, and one time I was watching, The Summer I Turned Pretty.
Oh
Yeah, I love that.
My daughter comes in and she looks at what I'm watching on my Apple on the screen. I'm supposed to be writing. And so she's like, why are you watching that? Because she's 16 and she thinks it all belongs to her. I said, every woman remembers their first love. It doesn't have many other lovers you have, like that beginning thing. But so I just wanted to know, because are you going to go back and write YA again, or did you do that and then graduate to adult, or how do you see that?
Yeah, you know what? I still have YA ideas too. So I think I've sort of been working on one on the back burner of all this adult stuff I've been doing. But I think it's what drew me to it is there's like a real immediacy to the teenage years that I think is really can be intense to write about. And, it's different than writing adult where you have a narrator who can be looking back on decades of their life and they have the hindsight in the book, whereas YA,
That's true.
I don't know if you found that, but like YA is very like it's immediate and
Present,
the emotions are heightened and everything feels like it's the end of the world back then. Like I remember when I was a teenager and like, you get embarrassed one day at school and like your life's over. Like, so, but there's so many heightened emotions that I think it can be a really rich ground for a reading experience. And also just, I do enjoy writing for teenagers, I think.
And I remember reading Judy Blume when I was YA age, and I mean, she was just almost like my savior. Scene, and those books were so important in those formative years.
I think that's so true. That's why it's like amazing to be able to write for teenagers because they, a book can change your life so much, right?
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have any of your books been made into screen adaptations?
Not yet. They've a couple of things have been optioned, but then options expire. So it's just been, you never know what's going to happen. But I mean, fingers crossed. Always, obviously, the dream for any writer to see something get made someday on screen.
Sometimes they renew it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be a long road, and sometimes like one studio might drop somebody's, and then somebody else might pick it up. So it's just you never know what's going to happen. That's kind of one of those things that I don't really think much about because I have zero control over it. So I'm just focusing on the writing, and if that were to happen, that would be incredible. And fingers crossed, but you just never know. Yes.
You guys read your reports.
Oh.
No, it's just horrifying out there.
I don't, and I honestly don't think that you should, because it depends on the person. But for me personally, I'm very sensitive, and so I actually adapt my own books. Like I will adapt them for like television or for like film. And sometimes if you have those things in your head, you're going to think something about your story. It's going to change the way that you approach it. And that's not the people that I should be listening to. The people that I should be listening to are like producers, executives, my editor.
Yes.
You know, you don't want to favor some random person on the internet because
No.
and it's usually because it's like something that makes you feel bad. You think it's important.
It's so true.
And I don't think that just because it hurts doesn't mean it matters. I guess.
No, you're
like,
so
what
right.
They're saying, right?
100%. Like you can't
So I
please
personally,
everyone,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's the
it's
thing.
so you also realize too, like it's so subjective. Like you get to a point sometimes with
Yeah.
books where you're like, oh, this, like even when you're working with somebody on it, and you'll be like, this person doesn't necessarily want it to be better. They just want it to be different.
It's
You know what I mean?
exactly.
And then there's other people that you work with who are like, I'm going to help you make the best version of what you want to make.
So true.
But yeah, it's very subjective. But some people like it and it helps them. I think it does depend. You have to just know yourself. So I don't read it at all. I don't even I don't read positive reviews.
I used to go
someone
to
texts
when
me,
I
I'm
was
like, I don't wanna
like
know.
starting out in what I don't know about you whenever YAs came out, I was like reading everything. So I'm like, oh, it's exciting. But then it was like, ooh,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I didn't want to see that because it can really get in your head for the day.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
as you're working on the next thing, it can be
And
like
it can affect you in such a
way.
The rest of your life, honestly. This is your job. You have to protect, I think,
yes.
yourself.
So I basically only read things if like my team sends them to me, and it's like, oh, we
Yeah.
got a nice review from
they're
such and such. They're not going to send
probably
me.
not gonna.
No, they're not going to send me
blow you
the
up.
scathing, awful
Yeah.
reviews. But I did stumble across one once for The Girls Are Also Nice Here that made me laugh because the review is literally like, these girls weren't nice. And I was like, what did you expect? Like, did you pick it up thinking, oh, what a nice heartwarming story of friendship?
Yeah.
No, it was, so I thought that one was pretty funny. That gave me a chuckle. But usually, no, I stay away because I'm sensitive too. Like, I feel like I don't know. Like I just accept that my book isn't for everyone, and it's going to find its readers, and some people it's not going to appeal to, and that's okay. We can't we can't please everyone.
No, totally. If you try to please everyone, you're gonna fail no matter what.
Exactly.
How do you get 3 editors on the same page instead of ending up with 3 books?
That's a good question.
You know what? I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I know that when we have our like Zoom calls or we have the edit letter, everything is very cohesive, and it always seems like they've talked about it beforehand and figured it out. So they're always on the same page when it comes to what I see. So it's maybe I'm just really lucky. I've had people who work amazingly well together, but either way, it's gone well. Yeah.
Are any of your kids old enough to read like a YA book of yours, or how would you feel about that?
No, they are not. My oldest is 7 and my youngest is 2.5. So they are young.
Oh, that's me. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Who has that on?
I know,
No, so my kids are quite young. So they're 2.5, 4, 5.5, and 7. So
So you don't even have twins.
no.
You've had 4 books.
I know.
Yes.
I thought she had twins for some reason too.
My
but then I
sister
didn't
has
ask.
twins.
I don't
No,
know why,
I,
but I thought I'm not sure about that.
I thought you had 4.
Oh. Thank you.
I want to hear more about the modeling days.
Yeah.
Actually, oh,
There's
wow.
a bunch of books.
No, when they are old, it's funny though. My 7-year-old is a voracious reader. She reads novels. Like she's into the Babysitters Club now. But she's
Oh wow.
she wanted to read The Girls Are Also Nice Here. I was like, no, why not? I'm like, it's for grown-ups. Like I don't want to scar you for life. So no, she's I don't know. Eventually, I guess they'll read my books, and that's really weird to think about. They're young enough that I really haven't thought that far ahead, but that'll be weird because my books are so dark. So I feel like I don't want to, like my kids are so sweet. I'm like, don't.
Your kids will
You
probably
never
be
know.
dark too.
Oh no.
People look one way, and then I'm like, you don't look like you would write dark to me, but
Yeah.
I'm with you. But then you look at someone, and you're like, and then they are like the best on writing of like, intimacy sex scenes, and they look like completely asexual when you look at them. You never know.
It's true, you do never
What does
know.
asexual look like?
No, it's so true. I think, one day they'll read my books, and maybe by then they'll think I'm uncool and they'll be embarrassed. I don't know.
Maybe you'll be lucky that like when they're teenagers, they're like, I don't want to read mom's
No,
books.
maybe. Right now, they're still in the phase where they think I'm really cool. So I'm like, well, that's fun. I like it. But like, eventually they'll probably
You are cool.
Thank you. Eventually they might be
In 7
embarrassed.
years, you might be writing in a different way, and you might be more detached from these books.
Yes, that's true. I mean, yeah, that's true.
You'll definitely still be a writer because you were
Oh yeah,
one since you were a kid.
I can't quit.
Yeah.
No.
That's awesome. Any further questions, Your Honor? Anybody? All right, let's close the show. Thank you so much,
Thank
Lori.
you, everyone, and
coming
thank you for being such a great
Canada.
moderator.
From London, Canada.
Thank you both. If you haven't bought a book already, we have plenty up there to purchase, and then we'll sign it.
Oh, I'll buy one.
You need to look inside this book. Now.
What's in there?
Another book. Another book.